Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra. Thank you. All right. So let's welcome Sabine to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Kyra. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, me too. I feel like this has been a long time coming, and I'm so excited that we're here together now. So, we are going to dive into our conversation. You are actually going to take us through a journey of an area that is always important to us. It is our mindset. It's always important to talk about our mindset and to just get some pointers right. We all talk about, like, oh, yeah, I want to grow, I want to do these things, but we're also human. And sometimes we have to be reminded of the things that we need to do in order to, set ourselves on that path to what success looks like for us.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get started with having you tell the audience listening or watching out there who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction and for having me on the show. So, for those of you who are new, I am Sabine Gedeon. I serve as an executive coach. I'm an author, speaker. I run a professional development firm that's really focused on helping managers, leaders at all levels. I do believe that we're all leaders. Just really tap into their leadership potential and their leadership power. And so my background, I was in HR. I started my career fresh out of undergrad in HR, did that for about 13, 14 years. A couple pivotal moments that took place within my career that led me to this space. Early in my career, I'm actually an immigrant from Haiti. And so I grew up with the mindset of you got to work hard, you got to work hard, you got to make it, right? And all that pressure. So definitely have that mindset of like, you got to be an A. If you get an A minus, it's like getting an F type mindset. And so I went into corporate America with that mindset, right? Coming out of school, that's how you get A's, that's how you get the gold star and whatnot. And I went into corporate America with that mindset. And probably 3 years in, I realized that that is not the language of corporate America in the sense of it didn't matter how hard I work, how many dots I took on, and dots are development opportunities that suck. For those of you who have never heard that, it didn't matter how many I took on, and I still wasn't moving up until I realized that there was an opportunity I started to pay attention to the people who were moving up. And I realized that there was something different about them. And I like to refer to the person in particular as Bob. There's something different about Bob. Bob is navigating this in a different way. That's when I first got introduced to the shift in mindset or what it meant to have a shift in mindset. And so I'll fast forward to when I got to a place where I was well into my career, got the job that I wanted so badly, and then realized that 6 months in, it's not what I wanted. And I had a little bit of a career or midlife career crisis. And it challenged me again to go back into, okay, Sabine, you wanted this, you got this. This is not what you want. You can wallow or you can choose differently. And that's when I took a step back and assessed when have I felt the most impactful? When have I felt the most fulfilled? And that was when I was helping employees internally figure out what they want to do with their life and then reverse engineering. And then when I was sitting behind closed doors with leaders and I could support them and I saw that vulnerability. So that was another moment and shift in mindset. I mean, I'm saying it like it was a quick moment, but it was a long moment, a long season. But nonetheless, I stepped out about 6 years ago into starting my own business, doing what it is I love. And having had these experiences and many, many more, I now help leaders identify where they may have blind spots in terms of their mindset, their perception, their way that they think that is holding them back as the person that is then reflected in how they're showing up in their leadership.
Oh, I love that. I love that. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your journey. And I appreciate that you said it was a long season because I think it's important for people to realize that when you have these moments and you realize that something isn't working for you and you want to change that, it just doesn't change overnight, usually. Now, there are some cases where people have been in a season for a really long time and then they finally catch up to what it is that they're supposed to be changing to, the transition point. But for most of us, you are going to sit in the season and you're going to learn and you're going to grow in from those moments. And then when you transition, I mean, like just personal experience as well. And all the times where I was like, oh my God, please take me out. No, please. All right. Like, can you just move it? Please move it. I'm tired of the lessons. I got it. Like we've done this. But it's the moments when you can fully come to full circle and say, all right, this is where I go wrong every time. The test that keeps coming and you keep failing it because you keep thinking that some magic thing is going to happen and just pick you up and take you out and move you to something else. But it's like we've got to also do our part. And I really appreciate that you said, let me take a step back and figure out where did I feel like I had the most impact. And also, too, another important, yeah, a lot of great nuggets just in this beginning of your introduction. But I think also too, like you saying, this person is navigating. This person, like you didn't sit and say, oh man, I mean, Bob's over here and he's just moving out and I'm over here working so hard. And what is it? But you recognize that maybe Bob had a different strategy and you needed to figure out something different. And don't get me wrong, because yes, we are really, we have some male listeners. So hello to the male listeners, but we are majority of women listening here. And we do know, right? When women, we're in the workplace and we are working with Bob, we are going to have to work harder. But you didn't allow for that to stop you. You just figured out another path.
Absolutely. I feel like I came into this world to ask questions, hence like my career path from like being a recruiter to now having coaching. And I wasn't afraid to say, okay, well, what help me understand? Because this was when I got introduced to skip level meetings. And I didn't even know what skip level meetings were. And I was just like, well, how is it? Because again, my ignorance, we didn't have these conversations at the kitchen table. So I came into corporate America completely free. And it was just, well, how is it that he's getting to meet with the VP? Like what's going on? And they was like, oh, well, I requested or he requested a skip level meeting and it's just an opportunity for him to, share about what he's doing, learn more about that. I was like, oh, we can do that. Let's org chart. Let me get the org chart and see who it is that I need to with. So my curiosity is actually what supported me. And don't get me wrong, there was a moment I was side eyeing Bob because I was like, I know. Oh, sorted than Bob. At the time, FaceTime was really big. So it was like the first one in, the last one. And like I was doing all of the things, if you will. And I was just like, something's off here. So having that level of curiosity to ask, well, what is it that you're doing? And then taking action. That's a whole nother piece of it, right? Because you can hear what it is that you need to do and then still talk yourself out of it and be like, well, I don't I'm afraid to reach out to this person. I don't know what I'm going to say and all that other stuff. And I think that's where mindset really plays into it. I didn't really understand what mindset was when I was in corporate. It wasn't actually until I stepped into entrepreneurship and I realized that, like, oh no, mindset is or success is about 80% mindset. And so it was a huge shift when I stepped into entrepreneurship. But looking back and connecting the dots, I could see how it was in those moments where I could take the route of being defeated or feel like victimized that I shifted it to say, well, if he can do it, I can do it. If I've seen that happen there, I could figure out how to do it. And that is what I attribute to my success today is just being open to seeing things differently and then taking action even when you're afraid.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, that's so true. All right. So we're gonna step back a little bit and talk about the mindset. So let's talk about growth and then fixed mindset and how do they differ?
Yeah. So if we think about what mindset is, just to break it down, because I know that word gets thrown around a lot in this space. So it's really your perceptions and your beliefs, right? And when you take that back a little bit more, your beliefs are just the patterns of thoughts that you have. And so for the most part, our mindset is developed between 0 and 7. So as our mind is developing, and actually it starts way in the womb, but we'll start 0 to 7. As our mind is developing, our subconscious mind is just recording everything, right? So what we're hearing in the household, how our parents treat us, how our siblings treat us, then when we get into school, friendships, all of that stuff, it's almost like it's just this big open recorder and it's recording everything. And then somewhere around 7 or 8, it's just like, all right, cool. I got everything I need, right? The program is set, the system is set. And then we start operating and we start living life based on those experiences, those words, all of that stuff that happened between 0 to 7. Most of us don't even realize it. And you use the word before that we get stuck in these cycles, right? Like you can start to see Like, we experience the same thing, and it's easy to be like, "Oh, well, at that job, they were hating on me, so that's why I had to leave," or, "At this job, I had a manager that really was intimidated by me," and it's just like people justify the experiences, never really taking a step back and seeing, "Okay, well, I'm the common denominator, so could I have something to do with this?" And it's not something that we're taught. So if you think about it from the perspective of growth and fixed mindset, we get to a place where, from a fixed mindset perspective, if it's like, "Oh, well, it's always like this," or, "You know what? I've always been this way and I'm going to stay this way." Or if it's just like, "You know what? When I was 10 and I tried out for gymnastics and it didn't work out for me, I'll never be able to do anything in sports," right? We create these beliefs based on experiences that we have, and we solidify them as truth and as absolute. That's what a fixed mindset is. A growth mindset says, "You know what? I've never done this before, but I'm willing to learn. There's a bunch of books in the library. There's a bunch of books. There's YouTube University. I can figure this out." The growth mindset always also says, "You know what? I tried this a couple times. I went for this job, this role. I didn't get it the first time. I went for it again. I didn't get it the second time. But you know what? I learned in between those two, like what questions that they're asking. So now I can better prepare." That's how the growth mindset shows up. Right. And so it's really taking that shift and saying that the past experiences that we have aren't absolute. It's then deciding that, okay, what can I take away from that past experience? And how can I leverage it, or what new thing can I learn? It throws that whole mindset, or for lack of using the term, but, growing up, failure was like the four-letter word, right? Like, for me, at least, I could not fail. Failure was the worst thing. It came with disapproval, it came with shame, it came with guilt, it came with a lot of emotions. And so if you're trying to operate from a growth mindset and failure is the worst thing that can happen to you, well, guess what? You're going to keep hitting that wall and fall back into, "Oh, well, this just isn't for me." So when we think about mindset, it's the starting point, because what we believe is possible is going to actually dictate whether or not we're successful in whatever endeavor that we're moving towards.
Yeah, I love that. And also, like, that fixed mindset is just limiting beliefs. I mean, you're just stuck in that moment of that was a great example of like, oh, well, I can't try out for, since I didn't do well in gymnastics, that I can never, I'm probably just not athletic. I can never do anything like any sport. And it's like, well, no, maybe you just can do gymnastics, but you could try something else. And it's so interesting because like it sounds so simple, right? And we're saying this, but so many people are affected and limited in their process because they're being held back because they have told themselves. And I love that you pointed out that it is like you're learning things when you're younger and you're taking in all of these experiences and these relationships and what you're being told as a child. And you said, like, failure wasn't an option for you. And then I was just, then when you were talking, I was just thinking back to where I was like, oh, yeah, that was like when I was growing up. I just always remember my dad always like saying this: you graduate high school, you go to college, you get an internship, you get a corporate job. And I was just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And he was like, "You get a corporate job." And then I was just like, I mean, for real? That's what I knew. That was the plan. It was never the thought of like, no, maybe I'll go to trade school. Maybe I'll be a service provider. Maybe I'm good with my hands, but it was just like, no, you have a brain and you use that brain. You use that brain.
Yeah. And you look at the statistics, and I didn't look it up before this, but when you can see it, like if you just look out of society, right? How many people go into the same profession as their parents, right? Like there it's a high number of people who will go into the same field as their parents. The number of people who don't move outside of 20-mile radius from their hometown, that number is even larger, right?
Yeah. And that's wild to me.
And it's not judging them negatively, but if there's something in their programming that says, "This is where I belong, this is home." They can't begin to fathom moving across the country or doing anything like that because it's set. This is home. And so it's very little things, and with the place that you will always be able to determine, and let me also say this, there are areas in our lives where we can have a growth mindset, and then areas in our lives where we have a very fixed mindset. That's really just because we have not done the work of uncovering what beliefs are there. So, from a career perspective and from a growth and learning perspective, oh, my growth mindset was through the roof, right? But I
Oh,
realized when I stepped into entrepreneurship, and I didn't realize this when I was in corporate, is that my mindset around money, my beliefs around money were actually very limited and very fixed. And that was based on the household that I was in, being a child of immigrants who had 4 kids and all of the messaging, right? So I had a very, very fixed mindset when it came to money and or limited mindset, fixed mindset, scarcity mindset, lack mindset, all of those things, right? And so you'll be able to tell where I might have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, where whenever you go to say, "Oh, I would love to do things, but," or "I would love to consider that, but," whatever is coming after that but is your limited belief. It's your fixed mindset speaking up. And because you've heard that voice so often, it probably sounds like, "Oh, okay, that makes complete sense. That is reasonable. That's logical. That's the responsible thing to do." So that's just what you've been conditioned.
yeah, I think that's so true. And especially when you talk about like the financial part, there are so many people that have like that scarcity, lack. People won't step out to do something because of fear of, well, I'm not gonna have enough. I'm not gonna have money. And no one's saying like, oh, if you have an idea, go quit your job today and like because money's gonna come. Don't do that. But we're just saying like it is good to recognize, like you said, because if you were out to say, like if I said, yeah, like I really want to go out on my own as an entrepreneur. Oh, but I mean, I have bills to pay and blah, 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 blah. Now, and don't get me wrong, I'm using myself as an example because in all transparency, I've said that. I've said that a lot. I mean, I've been in this business for 4 years now, and I've said that like through 4 years until like recently here. I said, oh, all right. So, no, in order for me to grow this business, I have to step into this business alone. Now, what instead of saying, but I have bills, I said, now I need to figure out how to fund my business. I need to figure out how to get funding, investors, whatever, so that I can fund my salary in order for me to work my business full time. And so I think it was the thing I just kept saying that, like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, I would love to, but I mean, but I got bills, y'all.
Yeah, and it always sounds right when we say it. It sounds logical, it sounds reasonable. Our subconscious is it's designed to keep us safe and keep us with what's familiar. So whenever anything threatens what is safe or what's familiar, it wreaks havoc and it's going to bring you back to that place. Losing weight is another area where we see this, right? Let's think about it. Beginning of the year, this quarter, everybody's it's gonna be a free for all this quarter, right? Like, or at least at the time of this recording, towards the end of the year, the holidays, everything, it's free for all. Beginning of the year, something shifts for people, right? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna work out hard. I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna lose this weight and I'm gonna have my bikini body, whatever it is, right? And then by February, March, we always or I always assumed that it was, like, lack of motivation, lack of discipline, lack of no, 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 no. It's because for whatever period of time, your subconscious was used to you being this particular size or operating with these particular behaviors. You decided that you wanted to move forward, but then it was just like, "No, this is not what we do." That's what stops people. That's the hindering point, and then people are just like, "Oh, well, there's always next year," or, "I'll get it by summer," right? And we shift, and it's just recognizing in that moment that when you decide that you wanna do something, you have to understand that growth is not linear, right? It's not gonna be like, "Oh, I decided I'm gonna do this, and every day is gonna be an A+ day." No, growth is not linear. When we put a seed into the ground, what happens? That seed is literally destroyed, if you will, right? Like there's a bunch of soil pounded on it, like it's dark, it's all those things. When we're moving towards something, we have to understand that our growth mindset develops in the process. That it's not going to be, I decided to do this and everything just works out. I mean, kudos to the people who live that life. Tell me your secret, please. I would love, please. But for the most of us, if we've been programmed and we've been sitting with a program or a fixed mindset on something in particular for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, it's going to take some time. It's not going to take that long to undo it, but it's going to take some time, it's going to take discipline, and it's going to take some effort. And every step that we take towards whatever that new thing is, it's almost like it's creating a new groove, if you will, a new pathway. So where it would have shifted, oh, no, we're going to go to lack and safety, you'll start to see, oh, okay, maybe there's a little bit of a detour to the possibility of something different. Then you towards it. Then it's like, oh, another detour. And so that's the process of growth, but it starts in our mindset. It starts in our beliefs, and it starts with us challenging every assumption that we have, every assumption that we, even if we see like this is what my parents did or this is what all my friends do, right? And we have to start using critical thinking skills and saying, yeah, yes, I understand that this was the pathway, but I also have evidence of people doing something different. So let me take a look at that. And then the last thing I'll say, especially in the time that we're in, I see posts and they're always related to DEI stuff, but it's always like representation matters. Representation matters. Representation matters, right? Because when you can see someone who looks like you or has similar attributes doing something, it gives you the hope. Well, opening that up, like they don't actually have to look like you to get that hope. Like representation is, oh, this person, whether it's Bob, Bill, whoever, is doing thing that I want to do. So the fact that I can even see it, perceive it, my outer reality is evidence that I'm capable of doing it. To entrepreneurship, and you're like, oh, that's definitely something that I want to do. Other people see entrepreneurship and they're like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, right? So that is that indication that there was an element within you that you could already do it. You just had to get to that place where you were like, wait a minute, this is possible. And now you're taking the steps to do that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So I know, so we have been talking about some of the steps, but is there anything else that you can add to help people to sort of, I think we've identified some of those limiting beliefs and we started talking about shifting, right? Like you've really gone into that. But is there anything else that we should tell you? We look at me, we should tell people know that you can tell us that helps people, when they're embracing a growth mindset because something else you said, now I just got a word jumble in my brain. Like a lot of things just happened at once that I had this thing, I was getting ready to ask you something and it just like, it was like, okay, so we're going to go back to you. And then if mine comes back, I'm going to write it down. I got my pad here.
All right, sounds good. So, actually, one of your previous guests, I believe her name was Vina. She's talking about leadership, and it was really under the context of, your relationship, your earlier relationship, right? And so, as I was listening to that, I was like, okay, she's my people because same concept, it's the same notion that, and I think she gave the example that based on like what you may have seen your mother do, like, it's a kitchen, right? Like you're cleaning the kitchen and then like a thought will come in. Those are those moments. Like, and she related that to the context of like, how we're showing up in our behavior. But it does require a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. Like, to sit there and listen to every thought, right? Because we're constantly thinking. I think there's like 70,000 thoughts that we think on a regular basis. And so thinking about it from the perspective of start with a goal, right? For those of you who are listening, I just know that you're all ambitious individuals. So I know you got goals. I know you got multiple goals. And so think about a goal that you set for yourself, right? Or think about a goal or an aspiration that you've been thinking about that you keep putting on the shelf, right? So similar to Kyra's example of the entrepreneurship, think about something that you've put on the shelf. Now I want you to embrace and engage all of the buts, right? I can't do this, or I want to do this, but I can't do this because it's not reasonable. Whatever brain dump you can do of all of the stopping messages, right? Because it's there, you hear it, you may like put it on the shelf, like, okay, I don't have time for this. Get a journal out and just list all of the reasons why you can't do whatever it is that you've desired to do. Or better yet, if you're towards the path on the goal, all of the excuses that you've made as to why you haven't reached that goal yet, right? Oh, because of the economy. Oh, because of this client. Oh, because of my manager. Oh, because all of the excuses. And I want you to, because this is the moment of honesty. And I think to really embody a growth mindset, we have to get to the place where we are more concerned with taking accountability and responsibility versus blame and playing that victim route, right? And I know that kind of sounds harsh, But yes, there are external circumstances. We can choose to look at the external circumstances as blockers or hindrances, or we can ask the question, how is this here to help me? How is this here to serve me? Right. So, well, I've just bundled a couple of things in there. So, start with all of the excuses, all of the limiting things that you can't. And then you just do what I just said. Ask yourself for each one of these, like, okay, why is this limiting me? Why do I believe that this thing is limiting me? Right. So if I may use your example, right? Like I got bills to pay. Like I got an adult, right? Like that is a valid, a justifiable reason for why not stepping into entrepreneurship. Okay. Well, why do you believe that this is a hindrance? Why do you believe that paying your bills or not, or yeah, paying your bills, let's just say that is a hindrance to you stepping into entrepreneurship full time?
Oh, me?
Yes. You can answer, but it was more for the
Oh, they
yeah.
oh, that's fine.
Oh, we could do it.
We see it, we got it.
Yeah. So ask yourself these questions and allow your subconscious mind to reveal to you what's stored in there. And then if you've worked in any manufacturing, there's this thing called Six Sigma, and part of Six Sigma is the 5 whys, right? Okay, so why is this a hindrance? Oh, because I have these responsibilities, yada yada. Okay, well, why? And you go through the process of asking the 5 whys, and in some cases it may be more whys, right? Like you got to get down to the root, get down to the root of what you believe. And I'll give you some insight. Oftentimes the root of our beliefs, especially when it's associated with lack or fear, anything like that, there's a deep down belief of unworthiness. There's a deep down belief of you're not lovable or you're not deserving. Those are the 3 core wounds that we're all grappling with. Now, you may not get to that and you might be like, "Wait a minute, Sabine, it's not that deep." It is that deep, but you may not get to that night
Yeah.
or exercise, but just start to question what you think. Because I believe that we're taught to believe that what we think is absolute. And that's not true because what we think here in the US, we go to a different country and they think completely different and they live completely different, right? And we also have a problem with that. Like when people think differently, we make them wrong versus understanding that no, they just think differently. That's all that means. So that's a practical exercise that you can do to start to uncover where those beliefs are. And then when you get to somewhat to the root, ask yourself, what do I want to believe? Right. So if we're using your example again, what do you want to believe that entrepreneurship can do for you as it relates to your finances and being able to pay your bills, right? Get back into that space where, and I love to use the word imagination because as kids, we lived in our imagination. And then our well meaning parents kept pulling us back down out of the clouds and come back down to reality, right? But I encourage us to use that mental faculty. It is a gift because what you believe, if you can believe it, right? Like you can actually do it. So go into your imagination and say, okay, well, if I didn't believe this, what could I believe? What would I want to believe? And then start to journal that. And so for those of you listening, just kind of wrap this up. Pick one goal, right? If you got 15 goals, like don't overwhelm yourself because your subconscious is immediately going to go into fight or flight. And it's going to be like, we're going to shut this down right now. And the next thing you know, you're binging on Netflix for 10 hours, right? So start with one goal and go through this process and give yourself a week, give yourself a couple of weeks to go through this and uncover where you may have some limiting beliefs or a fixed mindset around something and then start to decide what you want and then take action.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was so good. I hope everybody tries that because that was really good. I was doing the exercise in my head as we were talking. I think I live in an imaginative world still as an adult because my husband always says, what are you in a fairy tale? And I was like, I am. Just let me be there. Okay. And I wrote down, I know what it was. It was like when you were talking about logic, right? Because I don't generally live in a world of logic, especially I live with someone who's very logical, you could say. And it is always when I'm up here in the clouds, it's like, but I mean, I'm like, "Mhm. No, 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 no. You will not kill this for me. Okay. I'm a dreamer. Okay. I'm over here dreaming. So I like that. I like that you said that because it's important because a lot of times people lose that because the world is tough. It's tough to live and be an adult. And especially where we are now, right? In the world. It's very tough for a lot of people. All you see on social media are people who hate adulting. People who just want to go back. All every TikTok with anything that reminds you of what it used to be like. Those things, it's so amazing to watch because I am like a child of the 80s, 90s. So most of those things I got to live and experience. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember it was such a simple time. But then when I see a lot of people who are like Gen Z and maybe younger millennials, and they're just like, oh man, I wish I was there.
You miss out.
I know, I'm like, "Oh, bless you," because it was a time was had, like, I mean, we weren't running to pick up our phones, and I said, I just appreciated being a part of, like, a generation where I got to experience life without a phone, and then I got to transition into a phone and the internet and all that stuff. Because I was having this conversation with some of my team members, we were talking about getting research, and I was like, "Oh, like, I'm old enough to remember, like, going to the library and pulling out the card. I can't remember what they called it, but pulling out that card system and finding the resource and taking it up to the librarian and saying, "I'd like to check this out, please." And I said, "I don't know, there's just something really raw about that because you had to find things. Like you had to actually read something in order to put together something." I'm not saying, I think it's great that we can go to Google and we can find things now. Like it definitely makes things are streamlined, they make it efficient. But I think I just have a real appreciation for how it was and like what we had to do to get there. And I'm like, y'all just don't even know how great the library is. Like so many people just don't even understand what a gem the library is.
Yes, still. Even as an adult, every now and then when I go into the library, it's like this magical euphoric, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, so many books!" Like, yes.
Look like you asked. Oh, the card catalog. I think that's what it was called.
Right.
Card catalog. And yes, I have a library card. I got a library card recently to my library that's like about 5 minutes from my house. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just like to go there sometimes and just wander through the aisles and just look at books. I'm like, oh my God, the smell of books. Okay. Sabine, we have gone down that road, but I'm gonna bring us back, y'all. But thank you for allowing me to just I had a moment.
Yeah.
Was remembering. Okay, so that was great. I love that. Now, what if people are sitting there now and they're like, I hear you, Sabine, but I mean, I think there's still some challenges. And I think you maybe touched on some of them, but like, what are common things that maybe people might not realize are challenges that they face when they say, okay, I'm ready. I want this growth mindset. I want to do this. I hear you, Sabine. I'm learning. Let's do it, girl.
Yeah.
And what are some of the challenges they're gonna face, and how do they overcome them?
Yeah. So, first challenge is your mind is going to let you only get but so far, right? Like, if it's like a huge thing where, I don't know, like your early career and you're like, I'm going to be the CEO of this company, right? Like, that's a big goal. It's not impossible, right? But then your mind, and it's going to be so subtle. Maybe not the CEO, maybe that's too much of a jump, but like, I want to be the VP. Here's a perfect example. When I first started my career, I was in talent acquisition. I was like a coordinator and I was observing the HR business partners and I was like, I want to be an HR business partner. I remember my manager at the time was just like, "Oh, you're going to need about 20 years of experience before you can get to that role." And I was like, "Oh, absolutely not. We're not doing anything in 20 years, right?" And so that's when I was doing all of the things until I came across Bob, and Bob taught me how to do it easily and effortlessly, right? So think about the next step for you. If you're in entrepreneurship, oftentimes growth is reflected in our revenue, right? If you're making, I will just say 100,000 and you want to jump up to, $500,000 or whatever the case may be, that's the goal. What's going to happen almost immediately is you're not going to even pay attention to it. It's not going to be as obnoxious as like, "Oh, you're not worth $500,000. What's going to happen is you're going to find yourself scrolling on Instagram or maybe scrolling on LinkedIn. And then you're going to see all of these like coaches who are like, we can help you make six figures in 6 months. Or you're going to see someone with their lavish vacation and like how, all they did was make a course and now they're like sitting in millions, right? And you're going to start consuming this content. And what's happening inside is just like, oh, wow, I wish I were her. Oh my gosh, that'll never be me. Wow, she went to Belize. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, she has so many products, right? And then you're in that comparison. You're in that state of comparison and it's just happening. And then by the time, 2 hours later, when you're done scrolling, you get off and you're kind of like, like entrepreneurship is just so hard. Like it's so subtle, right? Like, and you'll make that decision in your mind. And guess what's going to happen? The next day, you're not going to wake up talking about something. Oh, yeah, I'm about to make 500,000. Next day, you're going to talk about how hard it was, how you didn't get any business development done, how no one opens up your emails, how this isn't happening, that isn't happening, that isn't happening. And then now you're back into your safe space.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep.
It's insidious if it
Yes.
happens.
It really is.
The Again, I use that example for entrepreneurship. I'm pretty sure for those of you listening, even if you're not, you can think of an example of like, oh yeah, you had this high flying image or thought and or idea, and then within hours or within days, you were back to, okay, yeah, let's put that to the side. So that is how it happens. Now, how do you stop that? Right. So one thing that I notice, and I pay attention to this, very specific to me, is if I get on social media, whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram, like most of the time I'm going to see if I have any like alerts or any messages. If I find myself scrolling at least 5 times and like I'm counting now, it took a while, but I'll count now. I will pause. What are you looking for? That is the question that I ask myself. What are you looking for?
Mhm.
And in that moment, I have to be honest, right? Remember taking accountability and being responsible. I'm bored. I don't know. Like, whatever that answer is, right?
Mhm.
Like, you have to answer that question. Okay, so you're bored, got it. Is there something else that would be fun in this moment for you to do?
Okay.
And it's literally treating yourself like a kid. I think that's the best way to put it.
Okay.
Treating yourself like a kid and asking the questions. Okay, well, you know what? What would be fun right now is, promoting my program, or what would be fun right now, taking my dog out on a walk. What would
Mm.
be fun right now is that, and then go do that thing. I know it sounds counterintuitive because it's just like, wait a minute, but I got goals. Here's the thing. If you try to push your subconscious mind to do something that you have not done the work of imprinting, it is going to stop you. So the way to get into that space is to go into doing something that you enjoy, something that's fun, something that's light, right? And then you're in that vibration, for lack of better terms. And then you go into, oh, it would be so nice if this year or whatever time I could close out my revenue in 500,000 at 500,000, right?
Mm.
So using that same example, and notice the words that I'm saying. It would be so nice. It would be so great. It would be amazing. It would be awesome,
Mhm.
right? Not I wish,
Mhm.
not I want, not I need. So think about the steps that we went through, right? Like you went from identifying what you want, identifying a thought or a behavior that would keep you from that, stopping, doing the pattern interrupt, doing something that you actually do enjoy. And in that moment of enjoying it, using that imagination, using your language, using your words to start to speak into, oh, I would love, it would be so great if this happened. This
Mhm.
would be so nice. That's how you start to create those new grooves. They call them a syntax. That's how you start to create those new syntax in like the waves are like I can see the word, I can't, the neural pathways. Thank you. Now create new neural pathways so that your mind moves away from, oh, scared, no money, not enough money, whatever, to, oh, that might be possible. And the more you're able to do that, it takes work. I'm not even gonna sit here and tell you that it does not take work. The point is you're creating your reality anyway. It's just a better way to do it consciously and to do it towards the things that you actually want versus moving away and focusing on what it is that you don't want. So hopefully that pathway was clear and those steps were clear.
Yeah, we like steps over here. And okay, so what are some strategies that or habits that people can incorporate into our daily lives as we continue to cultivate and maintain our growth mindsets?
Yeah, so a few things, and I'm a big believer in them. You have to have a somewhat of a morning routine. I hear people all the time saying, I'm not a morning person. Well, you wake up every day. Yes, you are. Language matters, but that's a different thing. But like, what is your morning routine? The first few moments of your day of like you awakening, if you will, those are critical moments. You get to in that moment, just in that space, just because your brain waves are like open, right? You get to decide, what are you going to feed it? Right? Some people wake up, the first thing that they wake up, they'll say thank you, I'm happy to be alive. They'll do gratitude or whatever the case may be. Other people roll over, they pick up the cell phone and then they start scrolling and feeding themselves all this negativity, or they turn on the TV and the news is on and all this other stuff. That right there is determining your day and the mindset that you're going to
Mm.
carry in the day. So I'm inviting those of you who are listening, decide if you don't have a morning routine, the first 30 minutes of my day, what am I going to do? The most critical, actually, the first 30 seconds are very critical, but like the first 30 minutes, what could I do to set myself up? So for me, I used to wake up somewhere around like between 6 and 7 in the morning. And that was like my regular body, a body waking up. And then I decided, you know what? I want to be able to have time to work out in the morning. I want to be able to have time to, I listen to books on Audible, like, feed my mind. So it was basically feed my mind, my body, and my spirit, right? And so that required me to have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So the first 3 hours of my day are dedicated to me. So there's an hour, well, between getting up and whatnot, but if you see it portioned into three, there's an hour for working out, there's an hour for feeding my mental, and then there's an hour on the spiritual. And that's when I'm doing gratitude. So I do a daily gratitude journal, or, I'm just kind of speaking into the intentions that I have for the day. Most people are like, Sabine, I got kids. I can't do 3 hours today. Cool. Pick the time that you can, the allotment that you can. And if it means that you have to wake up earlier, it means that you have to wake up earlier. This is the shifting of that mindset and of your behaviors that will lead you to your goals. So start with a morning routine, check on what it is that you're doing on a regular basis, first thing in the morning, during the day, right? A lot of people, especially for those who work in corporate and those who I coach, and I was one of them, so I'm not even saying in negative way, but it's just like the thought of blocking off an hour, 30 minutes, 45 minutes on your calendar just so you could have lunch and just have your own time. Like,
Okay.
especially with women, like the fact that it's just like I'm telling grown adults, well, why don't you just block off the time on your calendar?
Yeah. 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 A lot of people find that so hard. I'm like, no, no, I block off every morning between 8 and 11 for that's my time to work quietly and get myself together.
Good for you. I've had clients where I said, your first hour, just block it off. Then that way you can do your emails. So it's actually three parts, right? So whether you're working in corporate or you're in entrepreneurship, first hour should be you doing like whatever quiet work that you need to get your mind settled. Then some point midday, there should be time that is non-negotiable time. And then at the end of the day, the last hour of your day, that's non-negotiable time because then you can, plan for the next day if you
Mhm.
need to. Or I've been doing this for a while, is at the end of the day, like I go back and kind of instead of like doing the checklist, like, oh yeah, I checked this off, I just go back and say, okay, well, what did I accomplish today? What were my wins today? What were my successes today? And I think that that's important. Again, you're creating different neural pathways towards success, towards your goals, whatever the case may be. And so you have to celebrate those. And then at the end of the day is somewhat of a routine, whatever that looks like, whatever that period of time. If you're a reader, maybe picking up a book and reading, that helps me go to sleep real good. Having a physical book, maybe it's listening to a meditation, maybe it's just, cuddling with your children or your spouse or whatever the case may be, but also being intentional at the end of the day because as you're falling asleep, whatever the last things you were thinking about, whatever the last things you were doing, that's what's going to register when you're sleeping. So you want to be mindful that, whether it's affirmations, whatever it is, you're going to sleep in a good, positive, happy place because that translates into the next day.
Right. Awesome. Love that. Okay, this is great. So, Sabine, tell everybody listening or watching out there, like how they can work with you and how they can connect to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So on my website, SabineGedeon.com, all of my services, podcasts, books, all of that is listed there. I hang out on social rarely now, but LinkedIn is a good place to connect with me as well as Instagram.
Awesome. All right. So now we are going to transition into three things with Sabine, but I love it because you already answered the first one. I said, see, look, I was like, I love that because she already answered the how do you start and end the day. And I'm with you on that. When people say I'm not a morning person, I mean, it's how you set the day. Like, I get up during the week at like 5:40. Like on the weekends, I still get up early. And I just get up and go because I feel like that, like, and like you said, before my feet hit the ground, there are certain things that I'm speaking into myself before I ever even make it into the bathroom to go read or go into devotional and all that stuff. I'm like, but that is the first 30 seconds, like you said, is so important. All right. So let's ask you questions 2 and 3. What's a goal or intention that you set for yourself this year? And if you don't mind sharing, would you tell us where you are with it?
Yeah. So I do a word of the year every year or at the end of the year. And it's usually something that I'm praying on and like it comes to me. And so my word for the year, it was alignment or is alignment. And you get these words and you're just like super excited, like "Gosh, alignment, everything is coming into alignment. Yay. Alignment has been challenging this year, if I'm being completely honest and transparent, because what alignment means is that things that no longer serve you and things that can't go with you in the place that
Mhm.
you've grown into, you have to let them go. And
Mhm.
so sometimes, we get these words and we think that what we're experiencing is counter to that word or through that intention or whatever the case may be, where it's actually supporting it. So for me, I think I'm in a good place in alignment in the sense of this entire year has been a year. It hasn't just been shedding, there's been a lot of renewal, but
Mhm.
it's been a year where I've gotten to decide who and what is going or staying with me at this level and the levels to come. And again, we're human. And so when we are losing, even when we're growing, I think that's another important thing to say that growth, while it's also not linear, sometimes growth is painful because it requires that shedding and just understanding. And again, the mindset that you have, you can go into that place of like, woe is me. I can't believe all these relationships and this. Or you can say, you know what? These people served me in
Mhm.
in the place that I was, and now I'm going a different direction. They're going a different direction. I'm going to bless and release. And that could
Mhm.
be bless and release friendships. That could be bless and release relationships. That could be bless and release businesses, bless and release jobs that you're in. But just understanding that, getting into alignment, at least for me, meant the positive, the great things that I was stepping into, but also letting go. And so I think I'm in a great place with where I am right now. We still, at the time of this recording, we still have a few months. So
Yes, I love that. And I do a word of the year too, so I'm right there with you. I love that. All right, and last question, where are you currently finding inspiration?
yeah, that's a great question. So I take these morning walks. So speaking about growth mindset and creating what you want. So I live in a community right now, and across the street I go to the gym. It's a brand new community that has like a gym, like all these restaurants, all these nice places, right? I decided I wanted to move. I didn't know where, but I was there every day. And so it just dawned on me one day as I was walking by. I was like, well, why don't you wanna live here? You're so, like, enamored with this nice, beautiful community or whatever, like, why wouldn't you live here? That's when I had to realize I had some limiting beliefs that I needed to process. And so, what I do when I'm done working out, I do a 2-mile walk every morning, it's part of my morning routine, that's when I listen to my Audible. I just started walking through the neighborhood, and walking through that neighborhood, like, beautiful trees. They have a nice garden and it's just like there's a play area, it's a park. It's just this nice, peaceful, serene like place. And so for me to like just start my day, I'm like, well, why wouldn't I walk through that neighborhood? Not that my neighborhood is bad, but it's just like
Yeah.
every morning I get to walk through that neighborhood. I see the parents taking their kids to school and it's for in this season that I'm in, it's just so inspiring because I know that I am mentally creating the neural pathways that I need because I keep saying this is my new neighborhood. These are my neighbors. Oh my gosh, look at the kids that are in my neighborhood. So yeah, that's drawing inspiration for me right now.
Love that. All right. Well, I have to tell you, I've really enjoyed this conversation and thank you for letting me go over time. But it's just been so good talking to you and just everything that you have provided to the community today. I know will be so helpful. And like you said, at the time of release, this is a time where people will be thinking, I want more. What do I want? How do I, determine, these things that I feel like everything that we've discussed and what you've provided today is going to be so helpful. So I just want to thank you. And then I'm going to ask you for one more thing before I let you go. And that is, can you give us 3 things you'd like the audience to take away from our conversation today?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds childish, but if you can see it in your mind's eye, you can actually create it. Secondly, there's nothing that you have experienced or that you've been told or that you've seen that is final. We have infinite potential. And again, it goes back to that first one, but your past does not have to dictate your future or your now. So take action. And the third thing is I'll use the imagination again. Our imagination is a gift, and it's not just to, be in the clouds or place to what's the word? When you don't to numb out, right? We can use our imagination to numb out, or we can use our imagination to step into our grandness, step into our greatness, and really explore the power and the potential that we are and that we're capable of.
Awesome. I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much, Sabine. You can always come back
Thank you.
and share with us. I mean, I feel like we've got a whole nother topic just in talking about leadership and how to help people, in their careers. I mean, there are just so many things. I was like, oh, wait. Because I love talking about growth and development and helping people, like, step into the thing that is unique about them and what they're called to do. So I want to thank you so much. I want to wish you all the luck.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, stay tuned. I'll be right back.